Thank God it's Friday. It's the final one for the week. So let's get right into it. You're welcome to Business Morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa. We begin with oil prices. They were set to post the second straight weekly gain on Friday, spurred largely by brightening economic prospects for China, which should boost fuel demand in the world's second biggest economy. Brent futures for March gained 48 cents to $86.64 a barrel, while U.S. crude advanced 54 cents to $80.87 a barrel. That's a 0.7% gain. The benchmarks were on track for a second straight week of gains. Both closed 1% higher on Thursday, near the highest closing levels since the 1st of December. Federal Reserve Bank of New York President John Williams has said on Thursday that the U.S. Central Bank has more rate hikes ahead and sees signs of inflationary pressure might start cooling off from the torrid levels that we've had before now. A number of other Fed officials have also expressed support for a downshift in the pace of rate rises. Meanwhile, the dollar index was headed for a second consecutive weekly decline. A weaker dollar makes crude priced in the currency cheaper for foreign buyers. And now let's continue that countdown we do back here in Nigeria. It's 11 days to the expiration of the old note. And unfortunately, as at yesterday, I don't know about this morning, deposit banks and their ATMs are still giving out old notes. So what strategy can the CBN use to mop up old notes in 11 days? 11 days. Well, will we wait and watch and see? Meanwhile, the regulator has continued sensitization on the new notes. Yesterday, it happened in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and they visited some individuals and institutions to educate them on the new notes and also watch the spread. And their findings were not very pleasant.
Officials of the Central Bank of Nigeria arrived at the palace of the Honor of Abaji in the nation's capital. The bank wants to secure the buy-in of the traditional ruler in its sensitization drive for the new bank notes.
We are here to sensitize the public using the channel of traditional rulers. We believe, as the chairman of the Council of Chiefs in the FCT, we have the tool to also send the message around all your chiefs, all your followers, all the people in the FCT constituency, especially those in the rural areas who may not be able to have the messages, so that they can have the message and pull their money back to the bank. And once they do that, they can always use their money the way they want, using all the infrastructure.
And then the train moves to the Al-Nur Mosque, where Islamic scholars pledge to support the banks in the areas of sensitization for the new Naira notes.
I thank you for the drive, to try to do this sensitization and also the buy-in of the religious leaders. We will do our best, to inform our followers and let them know that, there is a positive thing that is coming out of this actually initiatives. And it is a government initiative. Government initiatives, policies like this, they're not just coming from the blue. They are coming as a result of detailed thinking and analysis and research, to ensure that there are things that are more positive than they are more negative.
The central bank had fixed January 13 as a deadline for banks to dispense only new notes from automated teller machines. While some of the machines are dispensing the new notes, others are still dispensing old notes. The outcome of the checks in the machines did not encourage bank officials.
We have gotten some information. We're going to analyze it and take necessary action for correction. It may even involve calling the MD of banks to ask them why are they still disbursing all currency when Central has enough buffer stock for them to take up. Possibly, maybe they didn't take up. Possibly, there are diversions, we don't know. But we already gotten data about what each bank collected from CBN.
The central bank insists that the Naira redesign is in the interest of a nation and should be supported by all Nigerians.
Another ongoing issue is that the President, General Muhammad beg your pardon, Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, has given approval to the recommendation of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited to invest 1.9 trillion naira in the reconstruction of 44 federal roads under the tax credit policy. The Federal Executive Council approved the recommendation to invest in the reconstruction of selected federal roads under the federal government's Road Infrastructure Development and Refurbishment Investment Tax Credit Policy, the second phase, by the NNPC Limited and its subsidiaries. We've been having reactions following these because some individuals are saying that the NNPC Limited should actually be focused on supplying petroleum products, as we see the persisting petrol queues in the country, major metropolis in the country. We have seen, we also saw that story yesterday where there's officially an increase in the price of petrol to 185. Awaiting more conversations and confirmation on that. But meanwhile, of course, getting the NNPC Limited involved in infrastructure refurbishment and rehabilitation has also brought up some conversations. That's why we decided to dwell on this morning. We have Mr. Nemeka Obiareri, the Managing Director of Taurus Capital, joining us for this conversation. Mr. Obiareri, good morning. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Morning, thanks for having me.
So some Nigerians are saying that as much as we do need infrastructure in the country, why should the NNPC get distracted with this infrastructure rehabilitation or infrastructure refurbishment when we still have gaps when it comes to petroleum products and its distribution in the country?
I still ask the same question. It's the same question that I asked when I read that report. Firstly, by the provisions of the RITC, the NNPC is saddled with the responsibility of managing our refineries and ensuring that the downstream oil and gas sector and even the upstream is working effectively. When you look at the number of the amount of money that they've committed or they are committing towards this road construction, you will discover that if you are to divide it by the official exchange rate, it will be enough to build brand new refinery about 300,000 barrels a day, which can be delivered within 5 years. So it is worrisome. And again, we also have to look at the whole fundamentals, the whole principles, the whole implementation structure behind this road infrastructure development program under APPD framework. Remember, it's a way of receiving tax credit from FIRS. And if you look at the kind of federation we run a three-tier system of government. And tax revenue from company income tax is actually supposed to go into the federation account and to be shared between the federal government of Nigeria, the states and the local government areas in the ratio of 52%, 24%, and 20%. So when the federal government of Nigeria, because if you look at the structure, the whole thing has to revolve around the federal government of Nigeria. And it's also worrisome because if you look at our physical federalism, the structure we have, for this arrangement to work, there's no gainsaying that we need it in Nigeria because based on the infrastructure deficit in this country, we will require about 3 trillion naira, 1,380 trillion naira to be able to cover the infrastructure gaps in Nigeria within the next 30 years. That simply means on an annual basis, Nigeria must invest $100 billion to be able to fix the huge infrastructure deficit in Nigeria. But the framework for its execution must be properly spelled out. You know why Nigeria worked so well between 1960 to 1966? It was because of the physical structure that we ran, based on what a federation should be. It is the same structure you have in the US, Malaysia, and other people who have implemented this framework to finance infrastructure development. We have to first of all tweak our constitutional and fiscal framework for this to work. And how do we do it? In between 1960 to 1966, we had a constitutional and a revenue regeneration and shared arrangement where the constituent units were allowed to collect the revenues, every revenue, and then retain 50%, pay 30% to the port, Naira port, to be shared between the less privileged regions, and then 20% is given to the federal government. And then on the exclusive list, the federal government was allowed only to control things like security, international relationship. Most of the things we have then, we are at the regional level. Nigeria grew at an average growth GDP growth of almost about 6-9%. In 1965, the old Eastern Nigeria was growing at about 9 to 10% per annum GDP growth. So we need to, for this to work, we need to look at the physical and functional framework of Nigeria. That is the only way. When we have such arrangement, we can be able to apply this kind of PPP to be able to develop Nigeria. But where we have 3 tiers of government, the taxes are supposed to go to operation account. And the federal government of Nigeria, the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Federal Ministry of Works are the ones that determine the roads that will be constructed. We don't even understand even the holistic framework. Nigeria today requires new road network of about 40,000 kilometers. South Africa has road network of about 750,000 kilometers. Their paved roads about 158,000 kilometers. Nigeria today has road network of just only 195,000 kilometers. And the paved element of it about 60,000 kilometers. And half of those 60,000 kilometers are in very dilapidated state. So if South Africa with a land mass of about 1.2 million square kilometers have paved road network of 158,000 kilometers, and Nigeria, that is a little smaller than South Africa in land mass, 920,000 square kilometers, has only about 60,000 paved roads. We should be thinking about within the next 10 years, next 20 years, how do we pave 40,000 additional kilometers of road while working on the existing road network to make sure they work. And this framework to make it work. The fiscal revenue cannot allow us to do this. Don't even look at the budget of 2023, 4.9 trillion that was approved across the whole to take care of the whole sector, infrastructure development. Nigeria cannot depend on fiscal revenues. We must explore these options, PPPs, this kind of tax credits to companies. But the fiscal framework must be right. And that is why we have always advocated for constitutional fiscal federalism, where resource control, resource distribution, and more responsibilities are devolved to the constituency, to the states and local government area, just the way we had it in 1960. By so doing.
All right, Mr. Obiare. Mr. Obiare, so what do you see wrong with this tax credit policy? I mean, one could say for the need that you have highlighted, that's why we have the NNPCL jumping on these boats, you know, to also provide that infrastructure that even they need to supply their products, you know. So what is wrong with the policy, this policy? What should be added or what should be subtracted?
Okay, what is wrong is the framework for the implementation. Remember, the company income tax is one of the revenues supposed to go into the federation account. The revenues in the federation account belong to the states, the local government, and the federal government. Under the current constitutional and fiscal framework, it is shared 52, 24, and 20 to the 3 tiers of government. So I found it, you know, I see it as abnormal for the federal government of Nigeria in 2019 to put an order where tax revenues are supposed to go into the federation account. Because when you give companies tax credit, it simply means the tax they are supposed to pay to the federation account is applied towards road construction. The federal government of Nigeria determines the roads that will be constructed. Some of these revenues, if the revenues were paid in the federal account, the federal government receives their own portion. So if it is their own portion that they are applying towards the roads that they choose, federal government, it's understandable. But going ahead to collect in advance tax that is supposed to come into the federal account and then only at the federal level determine how it's going to be dispersed is not acceptable. It does not augur well with the spirit and letter of the Constitution on the Fiscal Federalism Framework of Nigeria. For it to work, I am an advocate of public-private partnership arrangements in development of infrastructure in Nigeria. I give an example. For us to even have good rail network that works, we must have at least 12,000 kilometer new rail lines, which will require about 38 trillion naira to implement. We require at least 40,000 kilometer new roads. We require at least on the areas of power to generate about 60,000 megawatts of power, build the distribution of the grid network to move it. But the physical framework, the constitutional framework must be right.
Okay,
so that the federal government does not usurp revenues meant for the states and the local government areas.
So, Mr. Berry, are you saying that instead of this tax credit policy, then the government should be, because you're advocating PPP, are you saying maybe areas like concessioning, is that what you would prefer to see?
Yes, in fact, on the rail network, to do 12,000 kilometer rail network within the next 10 years, we must embrace the PPP framework, concessioning some of the rail routes. Sometimes I wonder how we run like that. The most lucrative rail route in Nigeria is the one that goes from Lagos to Shagamu, to Djibouti, to Ore, to Benin, to Asaba, to Onitsha, to Owerri, to Aba, circle back Okigwe, Umuahia, to Oka, to Onitsha, and then to Port Harcourt. This is a rail route that, based on the cargo and the human traffic, can repay itself in 15 years under a 45 years constitutional arrangement. It's just about 875 kilometers based on what the research that have been conducted. But because the rail infrastructure is within the purview of the exclusive list, some of the creative ideas that revolve around PPPs are not being implemented. So, like I said, to grow the infrastructure of Nigeria, we must be able to invest consistently on a sustainable basis, $100 billion over the next 30 years. But that cannot happen under the kind of constitutional and fiscal framework that we are operating now. And that is why some of us are paying at the highest decibel. For Nigeria to work for the entire benefit of the whole constituent, we must go back to the constitutional and fiscal framework that works for us between 1966, where regions, the constituent units, states are allowed to control the resources, generate resources. Companies within, see, it is how America has developed. It is the same framework. California generates all the revenue, pays certain, and by this framework, companies migrate to areas where there are incentives for them to station and work. So where we have an arrangement where let the constituent units generate their revenues, then pay 50%, keep 50% of it, pay 30% of those revenues as tax to the general port, and 20% of it to the federal government, and let the responsibility of the federal government be reduced to what we used to have between that. In this way, we do not have a strong center that is prone to monumental corruption, clannishness, feudalism that they have been destroying Nigeria over the last 50 years. PPPs are the way to go. You can never fund infrastructure deficit using fiscal revenue. I give you an example. Nigeria requires $100 billion, 43.6 trillion naira every year. If you look at what they provided in the federal government budget, 4.9 trillion is almost 10% of what we require. We cannot build and cover the deficit in Nigeria. On the housing sector, we have over 20 to 28 million housing deficit that will require over 516 trillion to fix. Based on the budget, if we depend on the federal government or what they are trying to do, it will take us over 300 years. But if we tweak our physical and constitutional framework back to those golden years, that was why we had the groundnut pyramid and cotton of the north. You had the cocoa of the west. You had the coal and the palm oil of the south, of the old Israel. Do you know that in 1965, the old Eastern Nigeria and the old Western Nigeria controlled 45% of the global palm oil market? Today, that market is $110 billion worth. If we had not allowed ourselves to be misled by the framework we have today and focus on the fossil fuel, if we had maintained that rate, today Nigeria would have been exporting nothing less than over $38 billion worth of crude palm oil. You cannot reinvent the wheel. The regions that houses this belt, the west, southwest that had the cocoa belt, I have no incentive again to explore inward, to build up the critical revenue through the whole value chain, because everybody has been made lazy because of the current warped quasi-unitary constitution that we are running. If we want to fix this country, we need to go back to that constitutional and fiscal framework that worked for us in the early years of Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Naimeka Obiariri, thank you so much, Managing Director of Taurus Capital. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, asking for us to go back to those former days, golden days, as you call them. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. Well, from the 1st of January this year, private vehicles that were paying 5,000 Naira premium for 1 million Naira third-party property damage limit have started paying 15,000 Naira for 3 million, while owner good vehicles are paying 20,000 Naira premium for 5 million Naira compensation limit, and staff buses now pay 20,000 Naira for 3 million Naira. We've spoken on this before now, but now we have from the corner of the National Insurance Commission now to explain to us why we have to pay more and perhaps some of those hurdles. Joining us from our Abuja studio, we have Mr. Samuel Chukwuka, the Chief Executive Officer of ICG Consulting Limited. Mr. Chukwuka, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'd like to know, Mr. Chukwuka, why should we be paying more? Why are we paying more? I think a lot of people were just okay with the 5,000 Naira.
Yeah, thank you. I can barely hear you, but I will manage. Yeah, let's start from the beginning. The critical thing there is awareness, public awareness. First, Nigerians must understand the essence of motor vehicle third-party insurance, and also the benefit of it for vehicle owners in Nigeria. The insurance of motor vehicle in Nigeria at the third-party basis became compulsory by virtue of the provision of the Motor Vehicle Third-Party Insurance Act of 1945, which became operational in 1950. The delay was inevitable because there were still very few vehicles on Nigerian roads at the time. And so the law, even though it was made in 1945, it had to delay its operation till 1950. Now, by Section 3(1) of that law, it became an offense in Nigeria for anyone to use any motor vehicle on the road or authorize its user by anyone unless there is, in relation to the user of the vehicle, a policy of insurance designed to protect the interests of third party as it relates to his life or personal injury if he suffers personal injury or more. Now, sometime in 2003, we had another Insurance Act, 2003. That act in Section 68(1) introduced what is known today as third-party property damage. The reason was that as at 1945, when the Motor Vehicle Third-Party Insurance Act was made, it didn't have the scope to include the third-party property damage, which became fashionable sometime in the 80s and 90s. Now, what it means, therefore, is if you have a third-party motor insurance policy, what it protects is the possibility of accident which may give rise to death of the road user or injury to his person or damage to his property. And in this case, we are looking at motor vehicle or other public structure that may be injured by reason of the use of the vehicle. Now, it is the responsibility of the National Insurance Commission as the regulator of insurance business in Nigeria to actually fix the rate. Although usually regulators approve rates as fixed by insurers in other non-compulsory insurances. But with respect to compulsory insurances, the regulator is given the right or the power to fix the rate of premium. If you look at Section 52 of the Insurance Commission, National Insurance Commission Act, passed in 1997, you will see that. Now, what the regulator has done is to review this rate as it is from 5,000, as you rightly said, to 15,000. Now, many people who have commented on this or responded to this actually have looked at the increase, as it were, from 5,000 to 15,000, but have not considered the basis for this increase. Now, why was the increase necessary? The increase became necessary because we have what is called the ECOWAS brand card cover. And we understand the ECOWAS Commission and what it's doing, integrating West African countries into a sub-region as a bloc. Now, one of the incidents is free movement of people and vehicles and goods. So it's possible for somebody to wake up in Ghana this morning and by evening is in Nigeria, and he comes in with his vehicle. So how do I isolate a vehicle from somebody who comes from Ghana or Ivory Coast or anywhere from West Africa? Because if you also drive on the road and you damage property belonging to a third party, even though he comes from Ghana or elsewhere, you will also be responsible. But remember that the policy of insurance issued in Nigeria does not have extraterritorial cover. It is meant to operate in Nigeria. So now that we have a new dimension of living as ECOWAS sub-region, and people can come in from anywhere, and we may have the problem of either injuring them or killing them by reason of the use of vehicle, it becomes necessary that we should have what is now known as automatic ECOWAS brand card cover. Before now, you have policy 5,000 Naira, and then if you want to travel, and you have to get another ECOWAS brand card cover. So both of them, you pay for them. Now, the 5,000 has increased to 15,000, but it also covered this new dimension of ECOWAS brand card cover, which becomes automatic by virtue of implementation of the ECOWAS brand card scheme. Yeah, now, but apart from that also, there is another dimension. Another dimension is that when we had this third-party property damage cover extended to the motor vehicle third-party insurance policy, it was only for 1 million Naira for Nigeria. So now that we are going to deal with other jurisdictions other than Nigeria, we have to also upgrade it to align with the rest of the other jurisdictions. So what happened is that what the Commission has done is to take into consideration the new dimension of the ECOWAS brand card scheme, and also to look at increasing the third-party property limit, which used to be 1 million Naira. And now for motor vehicle private is going to be 3 million. All right, Mr. Chikuta. Commercial 5 million and in that order. So, all right, Mr. Chikuta. In essence, what the Commission has done is in the interest of the public. And I think that Nigerians should accept this policy. All right, obviously. Let it fly. Obviously. Because it is for the benefit of everyone. Yes, I can barely hear you. As you have noted, NAICOM is the regulator, so Nigerians do not have a choice but to comply. But what Nigerians are saying is a lot of people who actually buy this policy only buy because they are compelled to, because of the integrity of insurance companies to pay the compensation when needed, the process and the timeline, to get this compensation. Those are the worries that Nigerians have. We agree there is need to make claim settlements become more efficient. And I can assure you that the regulator is up and doing as far as this is concerned. But one of the major concerns over the years is that the cost of the third-party cover that we are having has been too low. And therefore, the insurers have not been able to build sufficient capacity to settle claims. And insurers themselves know it also, that people don't buy insurance policies on the third-party basis. They prefer to go to get any kind of paper from anywhere and use it to cross the police. Now, what we are expecting to happen is that now that the price has been increased to 15,000 Naira, the insurance companies will be able to save sufficiently to be able to settle claims. That's one. And if the insurer now has capacity to settle claim, but is unable to settle claim as at when due, then it becomes an issue of regulator to intervene. And I can assure you there are provisions, even in the Insurance Act, whereby an insurer that refuses to settle claim that is due, when they assess up to 5 of them, the insurer license can be cancelled. Those provisions are there, and the regulator is able to enforce them only when the regulator is sure that the insurer is collecting sufficient premium to be able to settle claim.
All right.
Like I said before, there is need for critical awareness.
So what is an average timeline? An average timeline that an individual can be sure, oh, I can access, my claims. What's the timeline? And what's the regulator, NAICOM, doing to ensure that the insurance companies actually stick to that timeline?
Well, we have a legislation to that effect. If you look at the provisions of Insurance Act, insurer has 90 days, which is 3 months from the date of the reporting of the claim to settle it, if it's a claim that is supposed to settle, 90 days. And I think the regulator is up and doing, and the critical thing is not with settlement of genuine claim. The critical thing is that majority of the policies in operation are fake. So those policies that are bought from genuine insurance operators will be settled within the timeline prescribed by the law. And I don't think that there are issues about that. All we need to do is to create sufficient awareness for the need for the public to get the proper insurance. That is it. Once we have it, the regulator is there, and there are also NGOs and institutions that are working to support the Commission to ensure that claims are settled as at when they are supposed to be settled.
All right, Mr. Chukwuka, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and NAICOM's perspective with us this morning. Of course, settling of those claims, I tell you, are very important. Chief Executive Officer of ICG Consulting Limited, enjoy the rest of your day. All right, then we move to the markets now. Will Ibon comes in, and I do know that yesterday for the equities market, we had called it choppy because we had Monday was up, Tuesday down, Wednesday up, that choppy. But let's see, I think Will is focusing on the fixed income market this morning. Will?
Good morning. You're right about the choppy market, though. We did see that, and I talked about it being choppy this week. It's positive, negative. I think investors' appetite.
Can the market make up its mind?
Where are we going? We'll see that in at the close of today's trading session. We'll see how it closes.
Yes, I think that will determine the color of the week.
If it's going to be green or red. So we're looking at the fixed income, starting off with that, and see that the bond market opened on a calm note yesterday. It has been trading on a very calm note this week. We observed interest across the long end of the paper. Yields inched up by about 5 basis points across the curve, and analysts expect mixed sentiments today as they're probably willing buyers and sellers trade at these new elevated yields. Now, on the Treasury bills market, if we look at the Treasury bills market, we saw a bit of cautious trading in that segment as well. Bullish sentiment still persisting there due to sustained levels of liquidity in the system right now. Now, interest was skewed towards the long end of the paper, especially the January 11 paper, which was about 1 billion naira in value. Interest rates was about 5.05%, all in one deals. Now, average yields for the Treasury bills declined by an average of 35 basis points from the opening levels. Today, investors still expect, analysts still expect cautious trading as market participants focus on the funding for the bi-weekly retail FX auction. But we're going to have Choma Udo. She is a fixed income dealer at GT Bank to share more insights as to what's happening in the market and other events. Good morning, Choma. It's good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, Gemma, before we delve into what's happening still, we saw the finance minister in Davos telling us about the federal government's plan to cut its debt service to revenue ratio from 80% last year, that's 2022, to 60% in 2023. Now, looking at the bond calendar that has been released by the DMO, do you think these targets can be met?
Oh, well, the bond calendar shows that they intend to borrow about 400 billion every month. And we saw reopening across 4 tenors, which is the 28, 32, 37, and 49 This release of the bond calendar has spurred some sentiment in the market. It saw yield trend up a little because from the calendar, it shows that they intend to borrow more from the average of about 227 last year. Now we are seeing them take it up to 400. Well, the finance minister intends to reduce borrowing costs by 60%. Like she mentioned, they intend to do it to drive the revenue through non-oil products. So we see a lot of infrastructure. They intend to make money from infrastructure and tax. So we'll just have to decide and see how that plays out.
So we're seeing inflows from FAC. We'll keep an eye on that, as you said. But looking at inflows from FAC allocation that have hit the system, that's about to the tune of 990 billion naira. How are investors reacting to the yields in general, to yields trending down or up?
Well, about 900 billion was approved, and we expect about 600 to come into the market. That inflow hasn't really come into the market. But sentiment, like you said in your opening, has already started playing out on the short end of the yield curve, which is the T-bills. We've seen rates at the 1 year trade at top 5%. And we have an auction next week, and we expect that most of the players are going to, drive that, use the sentiment to bid at the auction, and we expect more depression in rates across the week next year at the short end of the yield curve.
Thank you so much, Chioma. We'll look out for that auction next week, and also the MPC meeting going to take place, and we'll see how that shapes investor sentiments. Thank you so much, Chioma Udu, a fixed income dealer, GT Bank, for joining us on the program. Now, we see trading at the equities market yesterday was moderately positive. We saw an uptick of 0.02% to close at 52,626 points. Market cap is still at the 28 trillion naira mark. We're hoping that investors make up their minds and decide to go green for today's close. Now, investors' interest in Lafarge, that's what drove the market yesterday. We saw Dangote Sugar, that supported the market performance amid the sell-offs in international breweries. Now, total volume was, this was a sea of red in the activity chart. Volume was down to the tune of to close at 129 million units, valued at 1.82 billion naira, and deal transacted in 3,180 deals. Zenith Bank was the most traded stock by volume, and we saw it closing in a value of 18.55 million units, and the value was 455.74 million naira. So, that's what we're having for the market, and we're hoping to see a positive close.
Yeah, we do hope
the market's investors played, on the positive side today.
Yeah, well, and hoping that they won't move to the fixed income, especially since we're expecting the MPC next week.
Yes, so if that yield keeps going up,
then we'll see them move there. All right, thank you so much, Will, for giving us that details. Let's go over to London now, where Juliana is joining us virtually today because she's been caught up with the strikes going on there. Juliana, good morning. Well, I guess you're in a very good position to give us updates on the strikes because you are also experiencing one of the consequences of it.
Absolutely. Good morning, Innie. Just to confirm that you can hear me
Yes,
clearly.
I can hear you, Juliana. I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Yes, well, the winter of discontent, which, we've discussed so much in 2022, has very much entered into the new year, and it's chaotic at the moment. I think in terms of striking in the UK, the most severe issue is got to be with the NHS, which is basically in a state of emergency at the moment. There has been several walkouts this week, not just by the Royal College of Nursing, which involves tens of thousands of nurses up and down this country, but also with other unions. And we've just had another announcement that ambulance staff are going to be walking out again. About 1,500 Unite member ambulance workers will be joining nurses represented by the GMB union on the 6th of February. And this is all about an escalated, bitter dispute with the British government over pay and staffing. The NHS really has been the beating heart of, Britain. You're supposed to be able to go into a doctor, whether you have cancer, whether you have HIV, whether you want to deliver a child. You're supposed to be able to go to the NHS get world-class service. And the most important thing is it's supposed to be free. But due to several reasons, most would say a lack of funding by the Conservative government since they've been in power over the past 12 years, it is on the brink of collapse. Staff are not happy. Staff who are working 12-hour days are not able to afford rent, not able to afford food, and they've been queuing up at food banks. So that is really the crux of the matter. And the issue that we have at the moment, Inni, is that there is no solution. There was lots of talk in the beginning about a 19% pay rise. We know inflation is about 10.6%. It's way above inflation. They've brought it down, but it doesn't appear as if Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, or Steve Barclay, the Health Minister, are ready to negotiate, but it is causing a huge issue. Any of our viewers that are listening in the UK at the moment will be hearing about these excess deaths, people that have been waiting outside hospitals in ambulances for up to 19 hours, dying in an ambulance because they're unable to get treatment in the hospital. It is turning out to be an absolute national disgrace. All you've got to do is look at the international media, including the press in America and France and Germany. They're looking at Britain in horror at the moment, pointing to their leaders saying this is not what we want to happen. So certainly something has got to give, because yes, it's affecting rail, it's affecting post, it's affecting baggage handling. At the moment, it's affecting and impacting all layers of society. Opposition critics are asking for this to be declared a state of emergency. We're just waiting to see what Rishi Sunak's next move is going to be.
Yeah, he certainly has a lot on his plate. It doesn't get any better with energy prices. We're at that again, and this time we're talking about Economy 7?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Energy and high energy bills still remains a hot topic of discussion in the UK. And Economy 7 is actually an electricity tariff, and it's an electricity tariff that's been in existence since the 60s and 70s, where there were different ways, of course, for households to heat their home. Fast forward 30, 40 years, there are still about 2.5 million households across the UK that are still on this Economy 7, which basically means you're charged a certain amount in the daytime when most people are at home, and a higher price in the evening when most people are back at home and turn their heating up high. There has been so many loopholes because, of course, we know that we're supposed to be on a fixed price guarantee. So typically you're not supposed to be paying more than £2,500 a year because that was locked down by the government. However, Economy 7 didn't fall into that. So unfortunately, if you are somebody that's on a mixed tariff day to day, then you will be seeing that your energy prices are likely to increase by about £116. It doesn't sound much, but it is a lot, because £2,500 a year is already too much, especially if you think this time last year, Inni, we were paying about £1,000 a year. That's just how much it's gone up, over 120%. So yes, there are significant headwinds impacting beleaguered households in the UK, and this is just another one to add to the headache, shall we say.
Yeah, Juliana, well, thank you for that update. We do hope to get you in the studio by Business Incorporated time.
I'll see you then.
All right. Okay, so let's head to the crypto space now, where it's been mostly neutral. We're talking about the sentiments in the market.
Yeah.
I don't know if, it's neutral today.
Yeah, we're still at neutral.
Yeah, well, it's January.
No direction.
No direction. I think investors are just looking out and being very careful before they make, any major decision this year, 2023. Still early in the year, though.
We know how, risk assets suffered in 2022, and obviously
the FTX thing, I think the memory is still there.
FTX is still very fresh in the memory of investors.
Exactly.
And we still have that Gemini issue, still brewing, the market. Now, they just filed for bankruptcy. That's a massive, crypto company. So all of that weighing on the market. And we're seeing, safe haven assets like gold hitting new highs, this year. But the digital gold isn't doing as well. And that's what we're seeing, neutral in this market, 51 points. That's the sentiment in the crypto space right now. Let's look at the market cap this morning. Failed to break that 1 trillion mark this week. There were indications that would happen, this week, but we've not seen that. It's up 0.73%. Volume traded, that's down about 32.30%. We see Bitcoin dominance sitting at 41.42%. Let's look at the price of Bitcoin, $20,956 lost. It didn't break that 21.5 resistance level that we're hoping it would break, but it didn't happen. It's down 0.29%. So any correction further downward could break to another support level. Talking about the price of Bitcoin, looking at 20,500 level. Hopefully that holds. Volume traded $40.38 billion. And we see Ethereum also having some volatility too, $1,545. Wondering if 1.5 is going to hold going forward. It's down 0.29%. Volume, still big volume. We've seen in the mornings, $18.91 billion. Let's bring in Solomon Amunde now, financial market analyst. Hello, Solomon. Good morning.
Good morning, Hardy.
Good morning. So we had the first week of January looking quite, bullish, but, the first half of January, we've seen Bitcoin and the market cap almost break that 1 trillion mark. But looking at how hammered most of these assets are, especially Bitcoin, which assets do you think are overvalued at this time or undervalued?
Okay, so basically, I feel we have a few overvalued assets short term, but the market's basically long term. Most of the assets are currently undervalued. But let me just state a few assets that are short term overvalued. So I would say Aptus blockchain is actually overvalued short term, and I also say Lido DAO is also overvalued short term, basically. So for me, I would say these two assets short term, they are very much overvalued.
And obviously, we see the resistance, that 1 trillion market cap resistance is proving quite, hard to break at this point. There were indications that it might, be broken this week, but that's not happening. When do you see that happening, and what kind of catalyst are you seeing that's going to break that resistance?
Okay, I think Bitcoin will play a major role for the market cap beating $1 trillion. And it will be very, very important because once we are able to beat $1 trillion, we'll see the market cap hit at least $1.5 trillion. So the major critical token I'm looking at spearheading the break of $1 trillion is Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is able to go past $25,000, I strongly believe that other tokens will rally strongly behind Bitcoin, and we'll see the market cap hit about $1.4 to $1.5 trillion.
And obviously, we know the crypto market doesn't sleep. They're still going to be trading over the weekend. What are you expecting for, volatility in the weekend, going into next week?
Yeah, I'm still expecting very strong consolidation for Bitcoin. So far, so good. It's still standing right above $20,500. But I'm very, very much optimistic that Bitcoin should correct down to $19,000 before making a move to about $22,000 to $23,000. So this weekend, I'm expecting more consolidation on Bitcoin and Ethereum.
All right. We're watching out for that. Thank you so much, Solomon Amunde.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's look at the top alts by market cap. There we see it's all red, on that counter, with BNB losing that $300 mark. It's down big, 1.92%. It's the biggest downer this morning on the top alts by market cap. We see Cardano, that's down 0.62%, and XRP is still acting like a stable coin at this point. It's 38 cents. Let's look at the 7-day top gainers for this week. There we see Frax Finance. There's $10.23, up 60.72% this week. Got some bullish news there for some liquidity tokens, and that's one of them that's running, and it's the biggest gainer for this week. And we see Decentraland Metaverse token, that's up 39.58%. We see the Metaverse, that industry has been quite quiet, not much development we've seen there, but there's some attention coming to some of these Metaverse tokens, and we see Mana outperforming Sand token there, 39.58%. We also see Engine Coin there, 41 cents, up 33.94%. One of the biggest gainers this week at 33%. Also, Metaverse project there, where you have those tokens. HNT, that's up 33.20%. We see the top losers, 7 days. We see TWT there, that's leading that counter down 4.22%. That's supposed to be red at this point. But so, that's how the market is looking. It's Friday. There's a lot of volatility expected for the weekend, but it all depends on, what news we hear from Gemini at this point.
Well, as Solomon said, or as you said, the market doesn't sleep. Over the weekend, we'll see what happens. But I think we shouldn't expect news over the weekend. Hope all those government regulations and all, we'll have a calm weekend.
Next week.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
So we look forward to Monday and see that how that happens. Thank you so much. Lad, you'll see at 1:30 for Business Incorporated. So that's it on the program today for the week. Thank you so much. I do hope it's been informative and keeping you just on top of business information and conversations in Nigeria. We'll start off again on Monday, God's grace. But do remember, tomorrow, 7 p.m., Capital Market will be here. That means we'll give you a summary of all markets, what has happened, how your money has fared over the week. You get that tomorrow, 7 p.m. But I'll see you at 10 p.m. for Business Incorporated for Stock Market Reports. I'm John Naira.